Hello, welcome to our today webinar about agencies and DAM, the essential need, going for gold in the new 2016 orchestration. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on which side of the ocean you are. My name is Isabelle Biller-Rayel. I am working as Business Development Director at Dalim Software. Before starting, I would like to let you know that if you have any question, please don't hesitate to post them to the question box on a side. We will answer them at the end of this session. I would like to share with you a few words about our sponsor today. Dalim Software is a German company who develop and deliver high-performance software solutions to produce, manage, transform, and share digital asset management for the graphic art, communities, and media industry. Our customers are ranging from brands to agencies, publishers to printers, retailer and pool player to producer. Our solution deliver a great user experience, enable our customer to collaborate, automate the production of their asset, and integrate with their other IT system, such as CMS, CRM, and more. But now, please, let me introduce you to our today panelists. First of all, I would like to introduce you to Fred Sanui. Fred, who is a pre-sales and solution manager at Dalim Software. He has more than 20 years experience with DAM system. He successfully deployed DAM at Hachette Philippe International Book Publisher, CIACOM agencies in Paris, and also the French Research Center CNRS. Fred will highlight during his presentation today the role of a DAM for agencies and expected benefit of the DAM.
Good morning.
I have also the pleasure to introduce you and to welcome Romney Whitehead. Romney, who has worked as a DAM and multi-platform content specialist across digital asset management, print and digital publishing, e-commerce, app and videos. Formerly head of digital publishing and DAM manager at Net-a-Porter Group and digital media management at BBC Worldwide, she has almost 2 decades experience working in the content and DAM space, having launched 2 award-winning magazine apps, managed a digital content lifecycle for the world's largest global luxury fashion website, and runs the delivery of content to all BBC UK and global magazine titles. She is also a madam, an interesting title, but behind this, we understand the master in digital asset management. Romney, during her today presentation, will run us through the dilemma DAM managers are facing when investigating for DAM. Hi, Romney. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, everybody.
Today.
My pleasure.
We are looking forward to listening to your experience and best advice about managing digital assets.
Jolly good. Oh.
Muted.
Oh. Welcome, everybody. As
Unmuted.
said, morning, afternoon, evening, depending upon where you are in the world. I'm going to be going through with you today some of the challenges that agencies will be facing, or do face actually, when they're dealing with digital asset management. And hopefully that will lead seamlessly into Fred talking about how DAM fits within a strategy, a content strategy for an agency. So, with the demand for consumer content growing at such an exponential rate, brands and large businesses, they're putting ever more pressure on the agencies that they use to create this content, to move faster, create smarter, and do all of this in a very cost-effective manner. In the past, where, for example, a retailer may have asked an agency to produce just one type of campaign for one channel, now we have the necessity for content for a single campaign to be both created and delivered to multiple channels. This is the perfect time of year to see this. The annual deluge of Christmas adverts is a great example. What was once the world of a single great TV commercial has now spread its content tentacles to include social media platforms, websites, print, merchandise, and even virtual reality for some places. And alongside this, many brands and retailers, they're offloading their responsibilities about storage and management of their content to the agencies. to be held within in-house DAM systems. The creative agency has been held more and more responsible for the digital asset management parts of the content lifecycle, and that's often born from the demands from their customers to repurpose content for new channels or to find and deliver back a campaign that may have been created on a previous year. So whereas a company who owns and runs its own internal DAM system has control over everything that goes on within it and what happens to the content, agencies have the added challenge of having to manage the expectations of multiple types of clients and users who will be wanting to ensure that their content is being managed with the same loving care that the brand would give it if they had their own DAM. So over the next 20 minutes or so, I'll be putting before you the key questions you need to be asking around things like auditing of your system and trying to offer some insight to both agencies who are on the line and their clients on what frameworks you can put in place to ensure that your customers have the reassurance that the assets will be managed and tracked and used in a way that ensures compliance with your brand requirements. So digital asset management is so much more than the technology that runs it. The digital asset lifecycle, it's not just about creation, storage and publishing. It's also about best practice and governance up front, management and transformation, and ultimately curation of assets as well. And why would you do this? Well, because if you've got rules around what you're creating, why you're creating it, how it's going to be stored, who can access it, where it's going, and finally how you archive it, then it means you can concentrate on what you should be doing, which is creating great content. All of these how, why, what, where, who questions have to be answered in order for you to build an efficient and an effective system. The best technology in the world is only a small part of your DAM offering, and it won't help you in your workflow unless you have some kind of process and governance around it. So where do we start? Well, the starting point should really be an audit. With so many potential clients that an agency is creating content for, and in a world of cheap cloud storage, consumer demands and speed to market content creation, this is something that most companies don't think about. I mean, we don't even think about it in our personal lives and on our personal devices, really. We live in this moment of creation where we don't consider the fundamental qualities or lifespan of what we create. And we also don't feel this is an issue for us as we have infinite space in the digital world. We can continue to create millions of assets and house everything because we don't have the physical boundaries in digital that you have in a bricks and mortar retail store. But our belief that we have all this space to house countless assets is really a bit of a falsehood, because the more we house without checking what we already have, without rotating our stock like they would have to do in a supermarket, without looking at what's out of date, at what nobody's actually ever looking at, without doing a proper audit, then we're just creating greater problems for ourselves and for the clients in the long term. And when I'm talking about an audit, I don't just mean how many assets you have, but what type are they? And what do you own? And when were they last accessed? For agencies, I think this challenge can be even more daunting with the multitude of clients, the many different asset and campaign types, the complex relationships between assets, and also the time between creation and publication that can range from hours to months. But for me, this is something you should be doing ideally every 6 months at least. In fact, in a perfect world, what you should have in place are systems and checks and balances that allow you to audit the system on a regular basis with ease. Because if you've got a DAM system with hundreds of users and millions of assets and terabytes of storage, then doing an audit can be time-consuming. So do your first audit and then put in place the systems you need to allow ongoing machine management of your content, because that will make life so much easier. So what are you looking for in an audit? Okay, let's start with the basics. How many assets do you have? I mean, that's probably pretty easy. Even a basic system should be able to return you a count of assets. And it's funny, you know, you may wear the number of assets you have like this badge of honor, like comparing the number of Facebook friends that you've got and that equaling popularity. It's quite funny. Digital asset managers often boast about this. You know, they'll talk about having 200,000 assets, and somebody else will say they've got 500,000, and then somebody else will say, oh, I've got 1,000,000, and on it goes, because, you know, the more assets, the better, right? Actually, no. The more assets, the more management and curation you need. Because the number of assets, it's always going to be increasing. But you have to think about what number is a manageable number, and things like speed of your system. Because the more assets that your system needs to trawl through on a search for a user, quite often the slower it will become. And the pool of assets being presented back to an end user can then be quite unwieldy. Ideally, a smart system should use technology and metadata to present back to the user only the assets that are relevant to them. But how do you do that? The problem is you'll only know what your user or client wants by looking at how they're searching on the system, talking to them how they search, looking at the frequency and auditing things like failed searches. The aim is to present the user with the correct results quickly, which might mean that if you don't have cloud storage, you might take your most recent assets and put them on faster storage and archive off older assets onto something that's a bit slower. I mean, the key thing is to manage your users' expectations, tell them what you're doing and why you're doing it, and just explain to them, you know, your dam isn't Facebook. It's not about the number of friends that you have, it's about the quality of them. Then, what assets do you have? What types of assets? How many images, videos, PDFs or Word documents, design files, PowerPoint, Excel, random file types that get attached into folders of content that your client uploads because you've given them permission to upload absolutely anything they feel like? Or how about assets that might be invisible to you but visible to a machine? Do you have a way to track and bundle these assets, even to display them to an end user? Are you putting in place up front some governance that controls the asset type being created, and rules that mean you're creating consistency and quality? And how about metadata? And this is big. Do you have a taxonomy that you're organizing all your assets by? Do you request consistent information that allows you to search on assets outside of the basic technical information or the brand brief that you're being given? I mean, we could talk for hours about metadata, and I'm sure there's plenty of Henry Stewart webinars in the archive and coming up that do talk about it. But it's a key component, and it's something that agencies and often companies don't have the expertise in-house to be able to arrange and manage. But it's a huge part of your business. Without clear data on your assets just become redundant and unfindable and useless and costly. So you've discovered how many assets you've got, what type they are, and then something that really doesn't get thought about is, are they sustainable file types? I mean, things like images perhaps may not be so much of a worry, but actually they could be the thing that provides you with the biggest headache. So if you've got a lot of Photoshop images with layers in that you want to access, are you going to be able to do that over the years? You've got clients who are asking you to produce PNG files. How are you making those? Are you taking a derivative from a master? How about proprietary video types? So different creators will use different cameras. You've got all the rushes that are being created, and then the resulting final TV commercial that will be created in yet another software, and then will be sliced and diced depending upon what channel it's going to be aired on. How about other more proprietary file types created for different publishing channels, or outdated ones? You know, Vine has gone. How many other things will go? And if you're encouraging your clients to upload everything they create and promising them that you are storing all the assets, then you're going to end up with some random file types populating your system somewhere that you need to audit and you need to manage. So for me, this is where agencies can actually lead by example, because if they have control over the content they're creating for clients, then ideally they should set up file types that are both consistent and that meet industry standards, and ensure that those are the only file types that are accepted. It's all about educating the people that both you're commissioning and the ones who commission you as to why you do this. And then you can ensure that you've got a DAM system that can take your standard file and convert it into the various types needed for publishing it to multiple channels. Access. So how many of you know when a file in your system was last accessed? So if you work in the field of preservation, then you might expect to have files that are not accessed regularly, or perhaps sit in a dark archive somewhere. You know, in fact, that might be part of your business model, so you can ensure the purity of a digital file. But if you're working in a creative agency, or e-commerce, or current affairs, then your system's going to be full of assets that were relevant for just a moment in time, that have been sitting there for perhaps years, and have never been looked at by anybody since they were uploaded. They're essentially gathering virtual dust in the deepest, darkest depths of your DAM. So ask yourself, can and do you track those assets? Do you know when they were last referenced and what you did with them? How do you go through an asset store of 1 million assets or more and find that information out? I mean, do you ever find that information out? In terms of access, you should use the system tools, ideally to do a monthly or bi-monthly audit of when an asset was last accessed and how it was accessed. If you have a set period of time, you can think about archiving assets from the system. And many people are afraid to archive off material, or they think, well, you know, we've got this massive cloud storage, why do we need to be archiving material off? But it makes sense to do that. And if you've got good metadata, then that will really help you, because you can archive assets off and just leave behind a reference to the asset as to where you've moved it to. And then it's always going to be retrievable, albeit it may take a little longer. And as long as your user's aware of that, then that's fine, it's okay. Don't be afraid of having an SLA that says assets that are older or unused will take longer to access. And do the same with copyrighted files. Once they move them off the system, just leave a metadata reference to them. It's a bit like the custody chain in CSI, if you like. You always know where something has been and where it's gone, and you can always retrieve it. How about duplicates? Meet Winnie. Winnie is my mother's cat. Now, this picture of Winnie and its various variations gets trotted out every Christmas. Very soon it will be appearing once again on both mine and Winnie's Instagram feeds. It's on my phone at least 3-4 times. It's on my computer some more. Every time I put it on Instagram, it gets duplicated into my photo library of my phone, which is really quite annoying because I've cropped and recolored this picture of Winnie quite a lot. This isn't a unique occurrence, and I'm sure that many of you have the same problem. So do you know how many duplicates you have in your system? People may have downloaded an image, retouched it, renamed it, and then re-uploaded it. Do you want that image? Do you even know that it's related to something that you already have in there? I mean, this is a real challenge when a client recalls a campaign that was done some time ago and then requests a version of an asset for another campaign on another channel. Are you relating the original asset to the new campaign as well as the original one within your system? And excuse me, I'm going to cough because somebody gave me a cold. Moving on. But for this, seriously, you need to think about master assets. So having your high quality multi-purpose file and then using your system to create channel specific renditions. But then think about, do you need to keep those renditions? Because actually, if it's the same image, it's just a lower resolution and you haven't cropped it, then you could actually afford to retain just the master and some reference to its published channel. So instead of bringing the lower resolution asset back into the system, bring the information about where it was published back into the system. And that way you can always track things like the success of an asset as well. So if you're creating a campaign and it's been used across multiple channels and mentioned lots and lots of times, reference that information back to your original asset. And last but by no means least, our old friend copyright. Now this can be a scary thing, especially because people really don't like to talk about rights. Often rights are commissioned post content being created, or rights are only commissioned for a particular channel or a particular campaign or time. So do you know what you can do with each of your million assets? And I think this is probably a huge challenge for agencies who are storing content on behalf of brands, because often they'll not be the ones who will be holding the full rights information. And if they are, then how are they tracking those rights? Are those rights reflected within the system? So what percentage do you own? What have expired? Scarily, do you actually have the right to have those assets in your DAM? Because unless you've got it specifically stated in a contract, then you might be holding assets you have no right to. Do you have a record of how many of the assets are about to expire their copyright? And what do you do with those assets? So if you're an agency holding this material, then this is a problem that you really can't afford to ignore, as it potentially opens up a risk to both you and your clients around the assets you hold. And if you don't have clear rights information on assets, then that needs to be clearly flagged up to anyone using the system. Because as an agency, you want to ensure that your brands are not exposed to any risk around copyright infringement, and that you aren't either. So now I've thoroughly scared you all, possibly, maybe. Let's take a breath and not panic just yet, because there are plans and processes that you can put in place now to help with all of these things that I've been talking about, and to try and ensure proper management of your DAM system, because it's a digital asset management system. You know, the clue's in the name, it does what it says on the tin. And ideally, the people who can help you with this should already be in place within your core teams. You know, if you're going to offer clients a service around digital asset management and repurposing of their assets, then you should have a team with the right skills in place to ensure you're meeting all of your clients' requirements and not exposing them to risk of loss of assets and data, incorrect publishing of content, expensive costs around recreation of assets already in existence, or, you know, or even maybe legal infringements. So now's the time to act. Don't walk away and think, well, actually, let's make this somebody else's problem. And actually, take a leaf from the preservation and archiving world. The Digital Preservation Coalition have really excellent resources to help you with this. I mean, I've spent a bit of time in the archival world, and I found that I picked up most of my best practice within that arena, and that really helped me when it comes to auditing systems and coming up with a proper plan around governance of a digital asset management system. Because you know what? We're all going to have stakeholders who, if you ask, will say, we want to keep absolutely everything forever. And if you have someone who says that to you, then you need to have a plan around what you've got and how you're going to deal with that as 3, 5, 10 years pass. And all of this may seem like too much work to think about. But if you do this up front, then you're going to spend less time micromanaging your system and your users. And also, it's going to allow your creative people to do the work you hired them to do. I mean, would you rather have them spending hours a week searching for assets, or recreating content that you've already made in the past, or searching and delivering once again a copy of a campaign that went out a year ago that you know is spending you ages to find? You don't want that. What you want is your people to be working on inspiring a brand's audience by making fantastic content. And you know what, also, it'll give your clients a greater level of trust in you and your ability to manage their assets over the long term. And your aim should be to alleviate any concerns that they have about quality or standards or cost of digital asset management. And the obvious one, by putting these rules in place, you'll be more agile as a business, and you'll be able to respond to your clients' needs much quicker. Time to market will be shorter. And finally, I'd say you really need to educate the content creators and brands, because if you want to put DAM at the heart of your agency's content strategy, then you need to think about it and not just ignore the fundamentals of it and the fundamentals of governance. So now over to Fred, who will talk more about putting DAM at the heart of your agency's content strategy.
Okay, so thank you, Romney. Oops. Okay, now, in fact, we're, first of all, good morning and good afternoon to all our attendees. So my name is Fred. So I'd like to, on my side, after this very interesting question from Romney, from the purpose of DAM by the agencies, what question you have to ask. For on my side, I'd like to see, in fact, of course, to highlight again the challenges and of agencies today. And then to see finally what are really the tools you need to be successful based on the DAM. So first of all, and this is more than a buzz, this is today one of the main challenge of agencies, which is the digital transformation. So today agencies have to provide the same content in multiple channels. So it's not only the print, it's not only the web, but today really, and related to my experience also, since years in the same time and very in short time, from the print to the web to web shop to the mobile and to now, and especially now to a social, it's not so obvious to figure out this challenge. And so I'm just trying to pick up some information from the last content marketing trends and report this year about the fact that which content marketing tactics agencies are using, and at the end that's what we see, in fact. So it's very impressive, and as we can see, most of the time you have to figure out in the same time all these channels, and it's not obvious, and that's one of the challenges of DAM today. And so first of all, and especially coming from my experience, I spent so many years working in agencies, whether for photography agencies or for retailers. We have to manage terabytes of assets, and as we saw with Rodney, it's not only it's first of all a lot of outputs, so TIFF, JPEG, videos, and so on. And so today, agencies are working, most of them, on a production server. Okay, so it means that you have some sharing volume, and most of the operators and people are working at the top. And so you do not have today many solutions to be able to monitor this file system. So I really do think that this is one of the key features to be able to monitor, of course, based on user rights, permissions, to drive the right people to the right folder, to the right content, but it's even more easier than for all the people in the agencies to get a look at the assets. And the other thing also is the user experience, because at one time, what you need is to be able to organize that content, to filter, and to edit the content. And also, from my experience today, of course, I really released since years some great software, just like Lightroom, but you have some other company providing software to browse the images, and people are very accustomed to this kind of experience. So it's good to get also at the top of your DAM some tools to be able to get such experience, okay? Of course, it's good to set with people. Now you are working here into DAM, but most of people are more accustomed to browse the folders on the file system and so on. It's a lot of waste. It's a lot of waste of time. And if you have this kind of experience, when you can see filtering of pictures, you can compare pictures, it's definitely the best way to organize, edit, and filter your assets. One of the second main point is, and of course, as said Romney, we can talk about during hours, but I can tell you, I spend so much time with people that just waiting for that, just to find some pictures of chocolate or things like that. So, and especially in agencies today, most of the people are reusing, and especially retailers, the same images. So what's happened at the end? You have to shoot again the pictures, and in the DAM you have a lot of copy of the same picture. So it's important to drive all your assets with metadata. I will also advise to the use the IPTC, which is a standard in the last 15 years. So it's very useful to add your own keywords to drive copyrights, location, and so on, and also find a way to. It's important to save this information into a files, because when you are at the end as a data manager in an agency, of course you have to take care of what's going on just now, but you have to think about the future of the content of the agency during the next years. And sometimes that's what I saw, in fact, during last years. You have some agencies moving from one system to the other, and each time they are very struggling to ingest or export the assets. So as soon as you have your IPTC saved into your files, whatever at the end the solution is able to re-index the content. So of course you can save your database, but if you can keep the information into a file, it's always better. One of the more thing about metadata is, of course, it's all about taxonomy. It's so much important because today I saw by iShatters, for example, people and photographers were accustomed to add their own keywords. But after years, and even pictures coming from Photolia or any other Adobe Stock Photo, most of the time you do not have any keywords. So it's important to get some tools like taxonomy to ingest the content very fast. In the meantime, today, one of the other last challenges, and especially this is one of the items this year, is all about learning engine. Of course, now you can find some solutions in the market to, without indexing anything, are able to retrieve some keywords based on the image recognition. The second point is one also very so important for people, and I saw during my experience during the last years. Of course, it's important to get it done, so now you can organize, you can control your assets, you have metadata. But what's happening when you have multiple sites and you have to get in touch, to get a closer view to your assets? What's happened, in fact, is people are always spending time downloading the files or uploading again, so just incredible waste of time. And so now I think it's important to check that UDAM has the capability to get a closer view to your assets. It means to get here to be able to see the high resolution. It's always a plus if you also can get the right simulation. So that's what we call that's what we call the soft-proof engine. So it means to be able to support the ICC profile of your asset, as for example. And in fact, what's happened at the end, if you can get a view of any kind of asset, whatever is a picture, a video, an office document, but something better than just lightbox of 1024 pixels. It's just avoiding a lot of waste of time downloading the files, uploading again, or just browsing your file system to use Photoshop, because, and especially today, I remember 15 years ago, 10 years ago, I was accustomed as the IT manager in production also to install Photoshop on every machine, but it doesn't make sense now, in fact. So, and especially you have based on the subscription model, so of course it's good for Adobe, but in the meantime, do we need to get Photoshop to get a closer view to our asset? I don't think so. So important to get such tool to control your assets. And of course, at the end, this is coming from one of the best reports this year from Forbes Insight, and this is really the clear representation of the challenges of agencies. This is the percentage of your content that you have to provide in all the different channels. And at the end, most of people by agencies have also, and that's what we're seeing on our side by Dalim with most of our customers, they have done. But at the end, what is the home of a brand today? And I like, in fact, the this schema coming from a risk-way group with Figure, where you can see that in fact you have to provide a lot of channels, and you have to provide to be able to push this content on a web portal. So it's important to get connectors, to get connections to whatever your CMS or your custom development, to be able also to get information from your MIS or to make synchronization based on XML files. So it's important that you then has to be able to integrate the content in your web portal. So now I'd just like to highlight what's most important by agencies today. Of course, to get DAM solution. It's really the beginning of everything, so and especially for agencies, because that's something which is most of the time not really highlighted, because today most of vendors do not have this feature. But it's so important to be able to monitor production server. And so even if in the meantime, because we know what's happening, so it's most of brands have their assets in Amazon S3, in cloud storage. We still have a lot of customers using even Dropbox, Drive to get some of its content. So integration with HTTP Pavilion it's more than appears today into DAM. So as we saw, taxonomy, metadata, this is really the big requirement today. And it's not only, of course, based on the solution that you can choose, it's also a question of process behind. So you need to build a team, and during years, that's what I did, to get a group of people to drive content into the files. The other thing today is now, if you are making a selection of assets, what's happening most of the time, as soon as you want to share with somebody outside of the company or the agency, in fact, you're making a selection, you send an email, and so we are waiting for some feedback from the people. But in fact, today, most of the people are working with more complex milestones. So you have to figure out what we call a business process mapping, involving multiple stakeholders with different roles and types. So it's also very welcome if your DAM solution has a workflow engine. And so this is one way, especially to figure out challenges to provide content in multiple channels based on the marketing automations. During the last years, also we saw with RadNet that we have to manage a lot of files, but we have some new output formats today, so just like video support, just like 360 movies, just like 3D. It's also based on augmented reality. So of course it's not the main part of the content by agency, but it's coming more and more. And if you can help your brand to make a decision based on the picture, on the 3D of the picture, so the idea to bring ideas to the shelf, so in the store you can view your product, you can on the shelf, and so you can make a decision before sending to a printer. As I said, to be able to browse some custom portal, today a DAM has to be also simple. You need to be able to provide some simple templates to get access for your brand to the assets. Social content management is also a key today in the success. And if you are just looking brands, most of people today are working with some bloggers working just on Facebook, and they have to drive some of the contents to a banner, to Facebook, to Twitter. So content integration, of course. The CMS is, as I said, also really so important. So whatever you are using, WordPress, Drupal, so whatever CMS, it's always important to get a connector to drive your content and to use, in fact, your DAM as the main repository of assets. And I see too much people now downloading files, converting files, different format, because you have to recite the assets and uploading it again into a CMS. So a lot of waste of time. The API is, of course, web services are driven also the business and the content into your portal, and as soon as you have to figure out some more custom development. It's important, and I will just finish with that. The analytics KPIs are so important today. So you need to provide such content in such analytics for your customer. So the benefits of them in agencies is, of course, have a central location of all your assets. So it's just a single source of truth. So you are searching for a picture. This is in the DAM, based, of course, on the metadata. And so this is a way to increase the efficiency here based using the metadata. And as I said, to just eliminate missing assets, shooting against the assets. You need to be able also to drive the right user with the right permissions, and also to be able to manage TRM, DRA at the top of your assets. It's important for your customer to manage permissions. And of course, the DAM is more and more today not simply a static DAM. It's also a way to manage approval cycle, to be able to annotate your document, to manage revisions of your assets. So this is one way that our DAM can help sales teams to centralize any documentations, to annotate and collaborate. So DAM make it significantly faster and easier the use of this content. And so agencies can use DAM to create secure private web portal to push the content from the DAM, and of course the analytics. So my last slide is all about, of course, about ROI. Of course, the DAM has a cost. Today you can find DAM solution from the open source solution to multiple vendors, but at one time it's important also to get some supports, to get some teams, some partners to help you. So you always have a cost because you need to, as said Rodney, you have all these storage servers, licenses, but also the cost of the training of the people. But at the end, and whatever consulting reports you can take a look, DAM is always the beginning, the way where you can save your work and start doing your business. And to be successful, I will just highlight three main unique selling points, which are the ability to manage metadata, so with all the features I described before, the ability to get in touch with your content, to be able to view in high resolution your content, and also the capabilities to manage workflows at the top of your DAM.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Romney. Thank you for all this information. We have a few questions to answer, and I will start with the first one. How many assets do you need to have to start putting in place a DAM? Maybe Romney, do you want to answer that one?
Oh, I don't. The thing is that I don't think there is a minimum number of assets that you should be that you should need to have in order to get a DAM, because, as I said earlier, the number of assets that you have is always going to be growing. It's always going to be increasing, and you know, you may be using something like Google Drive if you've got 1,000 assets, and using you know, something like that to be able to manage them. But actually, if you start small, get things in place, you can actually get your best practices and your governance in place very, very quickly, which means that you can then scale your system much faster. So you could go from 1,000 assets to 10,000 assets to 100,000 assets quite seamlessly and painlessly if you start it off small and start with the right practices small as well. So from my perspective, I don't think that there is a minimum number of assets that you should think about getting a DAM system for. Even if to start with you get something which is, you know, a cheap cloud-based software as a service, you know, monthly license thing that you then migrate from onto something bigger as you start to get more assets. So for me, it's never too soon to start.
I agree.
Yes, thanks. I have another one. Actually, it's not a question. It's just an information from Spencer telling I have no idea when my assets were lost access. how our current dam cannot handle it. My question would be maybe how important is it to know this kind of information? What are your best advice about it? Who want to answer that one?
Yeah, I feel people's pain because I don't think, especially if you have an older system, that tracking the frequency of access of an asset was ever something that was important, and being able to pull good reporting out of a system also wasn't really seen as a big KPI. It was always, let's just put all our stuff in one place. I guess there are tools out there that will allow you to interrogate a file. Some of the stuff actually from the preservation world, strangely enough, that allows you to look at the qualities of a file and then see when it was last accessed. It's about how important you feel that is, and whether you draw a line in the sand and go, okay, well, from this point onwards, we will always audit our assets moving forward, perhaps in a new system. But yeah, if you don't have the tools to be able to do that in your current system, then there isn't really an awful lot that you can do about it, unfortunately. It's really then only maybe looking at the age of an asset and thinking, well, if something is more than 2 years old, shall we just archive that, and if anybody comes and asks for it, then we'll get it back, and just letting the business know that that's what you're going to do, that this is your strategy. Your strategy is you are drawing a line in the sand at a certain date, and you will be archiving off everything which is prior to that date, and then putting in place governance for any new content which you're putting into your system.
Okay, thanks. I have another one which is quite interesting actually. What would the ideal core team to manage asset look like? So what would be your recommendation? Who should we have in this team? Who wants to answer?
Is this for me?
I don't know, Fred or you?
Yeah, I think, but this is also something we saw during all the year during the DAM RSU events. To be successful, it's always a question of the people. So it means if you have the chance to get DAM manager, this is the really beginning of everything, in fact. So I had the chance to perform in some agencies because this was also my passion, but also the way to be successful. Today I see so many agencies, and especially also on our side, we are in touch with some people. Sometimes we are with one guy, sometimes it's with another guy of company, and so at the end they are just missing a lot of things because it's not only tools, it's also a creation of people, and this is one of the an item in DAM Europe this year. You need to get a DAM manager.
Yeah, and from my perspective as well, it's about, so the DAM manager is the person who has the holistic view and understands the technology and the taxonomy and the business process. So is really, you know, the person who is the one-eyed man in the land of the blind, as it were. But equally within their team, from my perspective, what I've always gone for is people who have core skills as well as that holistic view. So having somebody who is a librarian, who can manage the taxonomy, who can manage the metadata, somebody who is more of a coordinator or business analysis type person who can help with the business process, and then somebody who is more technical who can help with the server side and dealing with the vendor. And really, if you have a core team of 4 people, then that should be enough to manage a very, very large global system, in my mind. And I've always hired librarians first because I think that data is extremely important.
Yes.
Okay, so we have another statement. This is coming from Spencer. We get tens of thousands of assets given to us by vendor of clients to use in a project, but then we never get any information about the usage rights info. So I guess maybe the question we can get behind it is, what would be the recommendation? How can we do to make sure that those assets are going to be used properly? Is there any best advice you can share with us, Romney?
I think if you are not getting information on assets, so not just rights but metadata, taxonomy information, stuff that you're going to put in there, then you do really open yourselves up to a bit of risk, and it's a difficult conversation, I think, to have with people who are supplying you with content, that you feel that you need to have some guidance on the rights, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to know the very, very granular details of the rights. You just need to know the access. So maybe the access is you know, this can always be accessed for forever, and it's being used on multiple channels, or this has limited access and can only be used on certain channels or with certain users. But the thing is you have to ask these questions up front, and challenge really the people who are giving you this content. Explain to them that if they don't give you this information, then it's not just you who's open up to risk, it's them as well, in terms of the legal side of things. So, and what you may find, and what you probably find, is that they probably don't have a right strategy in place themselves. They've probably never thought about it. So by you asking the question, at least you're flagging it up to them, that it's something that you're thinking about and you're considering. If they don't have that information, then there's really not a lot that you can do about it, apart from locking down those assets once they've gone out of the original remit that they were created for. So at that point you just have to go, okay, well, we can't release these until we have some guarantee that the rights have been re-cleared for another purpose or another use. But rights are a very, very big challenge, because really people don't talk about it and don't want to talk about it, and it can be quite a sensitive subject.
Yeah, I will say that, perhaps just adding just one fact, so today we have so many tools in the market able to manage such rights, and even for the funds. I had to figure out in agencies funds management. It's so important because at the end you can get some penalties at the end, and I remember and sometimes we have to pay for some issues. So and on the downsides today, it's I would say it's so important for a large company to manage such user rights and permissions.
Okay,
and it could be something simple as a pop-up that you put up when somebody uploads content.
Yeah.
That the content can't go any further until they acknowledge something within the system.
Yes, and on my side, I really try to also, as a data manager, to force the people. Now, within the IPTC, you have all the fields to manage copyrights and user rights management. So it's important to get this information as soon as we have got the features.
Thanks for all those advice. So we almost reached the end of this meeting. So we have also one question: if we will share a video of this webinar. Yes, we will, and you will receive an email where you can download the video. Maybe just before ending the webinar, one last question to you, Fred and Romney. If there is one advice you would like to put first, what would it be? Fred?
Start. I will say start now.
Romney?
Right?
Start now and hire the right people.
Yeah.
Don't procrastinate. Don't put off today. You know, it's not put off today what you can do tomorrow. It's make sure you've got the right people in place and start this work now. Start to formulate a plan now, a cunning plan.
Okay, thank you. So we reached the end of the webinar today. So thank you very much, Romney. Thank you very much, Fred, for both your good advice and information. We will post a video. Yes.
So thank you very much, Isabel.
You're very welcome. So we will post a video to you, and you should receive an email by tomorrow. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for attending this webinar.